Hello, welcome to the weekly videocast, and I'm going to continue this week what I started last week, which is looking at the likely trends and happenings of 2018. And last week I talked about the fact that we would see even more extreme censorship of information, not least on the internet through the giants like Facebook and Google. And this week already, Facebook has announced that it's going to dramatically increase the suppression, in effect, of information that it deems fake news, which, in terms of the reason for it, is that which credibly demolishes and exposes the official narratives of everything. And one of those narratives I'm going to look at today because it's central to where the hidden hand wants to take the world. And that is into a conflict between the West and Russia and China. I've been talking about the plan for a third world war now for a long time, way before China and Russia were perceived to be a threat in the way that they are now. They were quietly getting on with things in terms of the mainstream media, but that was only a transitional period, because the plan all along has been to go to war with them. Now, I'm not saying that plan will be achieved. I'm saying that's what they want to happen. And the idea is that you have a third world war between the West and Russia, China. You could throw in Iran and some other countries connected with Russia and China as well. And then you say, we have to stop this ever happening again. And so we have to centralize power in the world with a world government and have a world army and the end to national armies so that we can make sure that this never happens again. And if you look at the sequence of world wars, after the First World War, the power in the world was dramatically centralized compared with what it was before. Then you look at what happened after the Second World War, and even more so, the centralization of power on a global level was justified by the Second World War. And the idea all along has been a Third World War to complete that process of creating a fully fledged global dictatorship. And this is the reason that we have this insane, ludicrous, childlike demonization of Russia. No matter what happens in the world, it's the Russians. No matter if it's apparently, supposedly manipulating American elections and elections in other countries. Evidence, take our word for it. Whether it's a threat of invading Europe, evidence, take our word for it. And so it goes on and on and on. Even Russian athletes, those who have no record whatsoever of being involved in drugs, are being banned from the Olympics. And it's whatever it is, let's get Russia. And there is also the demonization of RT, the television channel Russia Today, because it is an agent of the Kremlin, so we're told. Well, first of all, it's in the name, isn't it? RT, Russia Today. Of course it's going to look to Russian interests, but at least it says Russia Today. Here you have media organizations in the West like CNN that has the nerve to have the word news in its title, that is simply a propaganda arm, as are these other major media outlets in the West, of this hidden hand that is pushing this conflict with Russia and with China. And in terms of China, that's the real reason for all the stuff going on with North Korea. North Korea is not actually the prime target here. North Korea has a massive border with China, has a very small one with Russia too, and it's an ally of China. So therefore, if you can create upheavals and conflict, even military conflict with North Korea, then you are lighting the blue touch paper in terms of China, which is what the whole game is. Then you've got Iran, which is an ally in effect of Russia and China, and they're being targeted. Again, if you look at the bigger picture, in the hope ultimately that could trigger this conflict with Russia and China. And so when you look at the recent happenings with regard to North Korea and South Korea, in the sense that they are talking to each other for the first time in a long time, and they have pushed America out of the way and bypassed them, which is, if you want peace in the world and you want countries to come together and come to agreements, then for goodness sake, don't have the United States involved, because it's not there to bring about peace. It's there to bring about the opposite, which is why, instead of welcoming this conversation now going on between North and South Korea, the American regime is dismissing it and still talking about conflict. This is also why Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State in the United States, is saying that Russia and China are the enemy. It's why he's blaming Russia for chemical attacks in Syria on the basis of no evidence whatsoever, just take our word for it. And this whole situation with the Middle East is the same. They didn't want peace. That's not the idea. They want conflict because through conflict you can manipulate the outcome that you want, where in a peaceful, harmonious situation you wouldn't be able to. And as well as the United States, you have to throw Britain in there. They're always there in the background and the foreground often. And also Israel, which is basically owns the current American regime under Trump. So all these things are pushing the world in a particular direction towards this planned Third World War, which would then produce the long-planned world army. And the point about the United States and its military, it's not representing America. That's the whole point. It's representing this hidden hand. It's just that the American taxpayers and the American economy is paying for it. And this was a story that came out this week. Let's give you an idea of the real reason and the real scale of this United States military, brackets World Army in waiting. No taxpayers' money is spared in Washington's military adventures worldwide. Trillions of unauthorized spending. And it goes like this. At the beginning of 2017, the chief of U.S. Special Operations Command, General Raymond Thomas, while speaking in front of one of the Senate committees, announced the following: "We operate and fight in every corner of the world. Rather than a mere break glass in case of war force, we are now proactively engaged across the battle space," which is what they see the world as, of the geographic combatant commands. These people are potty. Providing key integrating and enabling capabilities to support their campaigns and operations. And according to the director of the Arms and Security Project at the Center for International Policy, a guy called William Hartung, most Americans would be amazed to learn that US special operations have been deployed to three quarters of the nations on the planet. Furthermore, another researcher here is saying that there is little or no transparency as to what they are doing in these countries and whether their efforts are promoting security or provoking further tension and conflict. And according to the International Business Times, the countless wars that the US government has been waging on other states since 9/11, which was the manufactured, engineered trigger to start this sequence going. These wars since 9/11 have resulted in the cost of $1.46 trillion, which amounts to $250 million a day for 16 consecutive years. And that will be the headline figure without all the other added costs that you get with these things. So this is why the United States is everywhere. It's because it is the world army gathering to become the fully fledged version. And World War III is planned to be the catalyst to make that happen. And it's not just in America that this nonsense is going on. This week in Britain, we've had extraordinary hysteria with regard to Russia. Here's a headline: Putin a clear and present danger. This is the claim of a guy called Sir Nick Carter, the chief of the General Staff in Britain. And then inside there's this 2-page spread, Russia's eye-watering firepower. It's a claim also that they're using the war in Syria to test their frightening arsenal. Well, they've not had as much practice and testing potential as the United States and Britain in recent years. But, of course, Russia went into Syria to stop the proxy army of America and Britain, ISIS, from unseating Assad. And they succeeded in that. Now the West has gone into Plan B on Syria, which we see unfolding day after day. But what this general is claiming is that a weapon no longer has to go bang. Energy, cash bribes, corrupt business practices, cyber attacks, assassination, fake news, propaganda, military intimidation, and the arch exponent of this is, well, I thought they were going to say the United States, but actually he claims it to be Russia. And then in the last 24 hours, as I record this, we've gone to another level in Britain. Russia plotting to attack on UK that could kill thousands. This is the Defence Secretary in Britain. Russia plotting attack on UK that could kill thousands. Russia is forming plans for an assault on the UK's infrastructure that could kill thousands and thousands as they plunge the country into chaos, the Defence Secretary has warned. Do you think they'll do a better job than the present government's doing, and previous governments before them? Vladimir Putin's forces are not preparing for a ground invasion of the UK, but they have planned a brutal assault on critical services, including the national grid, Gavin Williamson has claimed. Yawn. Mr. Williamson said, what did he say? What they are looking at doing is they are going to be thinking, how can we cause so much pain to Britain? Leave the British government to it. Job done. And the cabinet minister filed the warning shot ahead of a review in which the Ministry of Defence will try to gain more money amid proposals for large-scale cuts in armed services. He revealed Russia is ready to take actions that any other nation would see as completely unacceptable. Well, not Britain and America for a start, because they're doing it all the time. Evidence, Defence Secretary Williamson, for what you're claiming? You'll have to trust me. I think not. So, another area that they have tried to trigger conflict with Russia through is Ukraine and all that went on there. And let no one think that they've let that one pass by either. We're going to be hearing more about Ukraine and Russia as this whole demonization of Russia goes on and gets more and more hysterical. But it's interesting that you have Russia being demonized for allegedly, no evidence, manipulating political events and elections in other countries. And yet we've had Joe Biden, the former vice president to Obama, openly admitting his fundamental influence, indeed dictating, events in Ukraine, where he's openly said that he demanded that someone was fired in the government within 6 hours or Ukraine would get no money, and the guy was fired. How he pushed the previous president, Yanukovych, to leave and let someone else take over. How in the wake of that, when Yanukovych refused, that there was a coup against him, all orchestrated by the West, of course. And they put in the present guy, Poroshenko, who was chosen by the United States, and Biden is openly admitting the involvement that he had in that. And, you know, the United States and Britain, along with Israel, manipulate more political events in other countries than any other three nations in the world. The hypocrisy is absolutely stunning. And they wouldn't get away with it without the extraordinary mendacity and acquiescence of most of the mainstream media, which is pushing this narrative now on Russia and China, as they push the narrative of this hidden hand all the time. And this is, again, the reason, or a reason, that there is such a war on freedom of speech and the free flow of information and opinion, because they have to keep this from people in terms of what the real significance of these attacks on Russia and China are all about. And this fake investigation in the United States by this former FBI chief, Robert Mueller, investigating alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, is just a smokescreen to make it completely unacceptable for Trump and anyone in that administration to get closer to Russia in any way. They daren't do it now. because see, told you, look at him, the Russians, he's controlled by the Russians. That's what this whole investigation and this hysteria has created. And through 2018, we're going to see the continuation of this whole plan to sell eventually a conflict with Russia and China. The good thing is that members of the public, or large numbers of people anyway, are far more intelligent than the mainstream media and most politicians. And they are not buying this crap on the scale that they would have done before. The pudding is being overcooked in the sense of it's the Russians has become a joke now, in the sense of the number of times that we hear it. And it's very, very important that we don't buy this nonsense, that we don't have the situation where we're told that Russia is a threat to Europe, when actually NATO has had a build-up of troops and the military along the borders of Russia that is the biggest since the Cold War, but the Russians claim since World War II, appropriately. And we need to look at the evidence of what's happening rather than the rhetoric and the propaganda, because we're going to hear more and more and more of this as they try to push on to this ultimate goal they have of this third global conflict. So that's one of the big themes of 2018 and beyond. And it's so important that we don't buy the lie, because if enough of us don't, then they're going to find it far, far harder to make it happen.